Religions are not monolithic. Not all Christians are Catholics, and not all Protestants are Baptists. And the same can be said for Islam. Now, I'm sure most of you know the basic divisions within Islam. There's Sunnis and Shias. There's also a body, but that's a story for another time. Well, not only is there that division, but there are also divisions within both Sunni and Shia Islam. Sunni Islam is a lot bigger than Shia Islam in terms of number of adherents, and so that's probably best a story for another time. And so for this video, I'm going to focus on the early history of Shia Islam and the numerous schisms that occurred in its early history, creating this very interesting patchwork that's quite different than its Sunni brothers. And this video is going to focus on a particular set of characters within the history of early Shia Islam, that being the 12 Imams.
You see, Sunni Muslims have usually looked to a figure called the Caliph to be the political and spiritual leader of Muslims, but the Shia look to a figure called the Imam. Both Sunnis and Shia have Imams, but they are quite different. The word Imam comes from the Arabic word amma, meaning lead the way. In Sunni Islam, this refers to the person who is leading a group of Muslims in prayer. In Shia Islam, however, the position of Imam is far more grand. After the death of the Prophet Muhammad, there was a dispute over who should lead the Muslim community. The position created for this was the Caliph, who held both political and spiritual authority. The earliest cracks between Sunni and Shia emerged from this dispute. The Prophet's cousin and son-in-law Ali was favored by some, but he was rejected in favor of Muhammad's father-in-law, Abu Bakr. Ali would eventually get his chance to be Caliph, but after a civil war with the Umayyad governor of Syria, he was assassinated. This was followed by a brief political challenge by Ali's eldest son, Hassan, who ultimately decided not to challenge Muawiyah for the throne. He died a decade later, at which point his younger brother, Hussein, decided to challenge Muawiyah's son, Yazid, but he and his followers were brutally slaughtered at Karbala. By this point, the supporters of Ali and his sons had become known as the Shi'at Ali, or the Shia. After the martyrdom of Hussein, the Shia rejected the institution of caliph and caliphate, substituting it with the imam and imamate. Their imam was singular, someone special, chosen by God and the descendant of the Prophet's daughter Fatima. And when the imam dies, this semi-divine role is passed on to a close relative. This system retroactively turned Ali into the first imam, his son Hassan into the second, and Hussein into the third. The massacre at Karbala also created the first major split within the Shia. There were those that sought vengeance for Hussein through political and military action, and those who focused on spiritual affairs. The latter supported Hussein's son, Ali ibn Hussein, who would be recognized as the fourth Imam by most Shia. He was known for his piety and his decision to not get involved in the politics of the Umayyad Caliphate. But because he refused to rise up against the Umayyads after the death of Hussein, most Shia were not followers of him, but rather one or more of his rivals. Also claiming the title of Imam was Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. He was the third son of Ali, but born to a different mother than Hassan and Hussein. Many Shia supported his claim to be Imam and became known as the Qaysanites. One of his extremely devoted followers, Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, led a revolt in his name in Kufa in 685, taking over much of Iraq during the Second Fitna. Al-Hanafiyyah never endorsed the revolt, but he was most likely covertly supporting it. But whether he was aiding the revolt or not, it failed with the death of al-Thaqafi, all the while Ali ibn Hussein kept his head down while authoring numerous pieces of Shia literature. He died in 712, and many Shia allege that he was poisoned by the Umayyad Caliph al-Walid I. You better get used to hearing that because that happens a lot. His son, Muhammad al-Baqir, would succeed him as the fifth Imam, and would continue many of his father's policies, such as staying out of politics. But just like his father, this resulted in the majority of Shia following rival claimants instead, his biggest challenger being Abu Hashim, the son of al-Hanafiyyah. After al-Hanafiyyah died, his followers split up into multiple sects, the largest of which were the Hashimiyya, who supported Abu Hashim's claim to be the fifth Imam. However, there was another sect, the Karabiyya, who refused to acknowledge the death of al-Hanafiyyah. They would be the first to introduce the concept of occultation into Shia Islam. Occultation is a belief that a messianic figure within Islam, known as the Mahdi, was born into the world and with the assistance of God went into hiding, and would return during the end times to rule with proper and just Islamic law. The concept of Mahdi is held by both Sunni and Shia Muslims, and they both believe that he will be someone from the Prophet's family. But most Sunni believe that the Mahdi is someone who has not yet been born, while most Shia believe that the Mahdi has already been born and taken away into occultation to await the end of days. Most Shia Muslims believe that the Mahdi will be a direct descendant of Muhammad through Fatima and Ali, and that he will have been one of the historical Imams. Over time, this belief would become more widely embraced and commonly used as a justification for schisms within the Shia. The other rival to his claim was his brother Zaid. Zaid was born after the massacre at Karbala, but from a young age he was somewhat fanatic. He not only challenged the claim of al-Bakir, he and his followers would also challenge the claim of their father, Ali ibn Hussein. The fourth Imam, prior to the death of Hussein, was told not to follow his father into battle due to being ill. But his cousin, Hassan al-Muthanna, the son of the second Imam, did go into battle with Hussein and was also martyred at Karbala. The followers of Zaid would recognize him as the fourth Imam rather than his cousin Ali ibn Hussein, thus making Zaid the fifth Imam in their own counting. To Zaid and his followers, the position of Imam belonged to any descendant of Fatima and Ali who was willing to stand up to injustice with the force of arms. After al-Bakir's death, his son, Jafar al-Sadiq, became the sixth Imam. And as Imam, he began to emphasize the importance of a proper model of succession, most likely to prevent the further fracturing of the movement. His model for proper succession was by designation. He would converse with God, who would guide him to the proper successor, so that after his death, both his successor and his followers knew who the next Imam was. Aside from this, he is well respected by both Sunni and Shia Islamic scholars, and many of his students would go on to found numerous schools of Islamic law within both Sunni and Shia Islam. His imamate would be a transitional period, witnessing both the end of the Umayyad dynasty and the rise of the Abbasids. In 740, his uncle Zaid attempted a revolt in Kufa against the Umayyad Caliph Hisham, which was brutally put down. This was followed by a revolt from the al-Hanafiya line. The Hashemiyya had fractured after Abu Hashim's death in 716, and multiple people claimed to be the sixth Imam of his line. Just like with his father, some of his followers believed that Abu Hashim didn't die but was taken into occultation. But one of the claimants to his mantle of Imam was Abdullah ibn Muawiyah, who was the great-grandson of Ali's older brother, Jafar ibn Abi Talib. Not only did he claim to be the rightful sixth Imam, succeeding Abu Hashim, he also claimed to be a prophet and the Godhead, which is theological jargon meaning that he was of God, similar to how Jesus is of God in Christianity. He would also lead a revolt against the Umayyad in Kufa in 744 and was also easily defeated. In the lead up to the Abbasid revolution, there were rumors that Jafar al-Sadiq had been offered the position of caliph, but had turned it down. The Abbasids tried to gain the support of the Shia and went so far as to claim the imamate for themselves. Another claimant was Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Abdallah, a descendant of the Prophet's uncle al-Abbas. He claimed that Abu Hashim designated him as a successor to the imamate on his deathbed, and his position as Imam of the al-Hanafiya line would be passed down to his son, Abu al-Abbas, who would become the first Abbasid caliph. The Abbasids eventually dropped their claim to the imamate once their hold over the caliphate was secured. Despite this, another Shia revolt broke out in Medina in 762 during the reign of al-Mansur. This revolt was led by Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah, a great-grandson of the second Imam, and was followed by another revolt 2 months later in Basra, led by his brother Ibrahim. Both were put down in 763. Before he died, Jafar al-Sadiq designated a successor, his eldest son Ismail. However, Ismail died before the sixth Imam, who failed to name a new successor. This resulted in a schism after his death. There were those who believed that al-Sadiq didn't actually die but was taken into occultation, these becoming the Nawasiyya sect. There were also those who supported his eldest living son, Abdullah al-Afta, who were known as the Fathites. Much of Jafar al-Sadiq's followers initially supported al-Afta, but he died 70 days after his father. Some continued to support al-Afta's line by claiming that he had a son in secret, whom they called Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Afta, who would succeed his father as the eighth Imam and was then taken into occultation. But after al-Afta's death, most of his followers shifted their support to his younger brother, al-Kazim, who would be recognized by most Shia as the seventh Imam. Al-Kazim's biggest rival claimant would be the supporters of his dead older brother, Ismail. Ismail seemed to have spent his early years supporting the more activist wings of the Shia movement, allegedly taking part in anti-Abbasid plots in the 750s, and also possibly being involved in the revolts of Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zakiyah. At some point, Ismail went into hiding, possibly at the urging of his father to protect him from Abbasid reprisal. However, he was later recognized as dead, but Jafar al-Sadiq never named a new successor. This led to supporters of Ismail insisting that the line of succession for the imamate must pass through Ismail rather than his younger brothers. These supporters became the founders of the Ismaili branch of Shia Islam, but they were not a united movement. Some of the Ismailis believed that Ismaili didn't die but rather was taken into occultation and would return as the Mahdi. These factions became known as the Seveners. The other major line of Ismailis believed that the imamate passed over Ismaili himself and down to his son, Muhammad ibn Ismaili, who became their 7th Imam, and that his descendants continued their line of Imams into the 11th century, founding the Fatimid Caliphate in North Africa.
If you'd like to learn more about that, then I suggest you watch this video from Hikmah History. He makes videos about Islamic history, and he made this video about the Fatimid Caliphate in tandem with me making this video about the schisms of early Shia Islam. So when you're done watching this video, go ahead and watch his. You can find his video in the description and the cards in the upper right hand corner or on the end screen. But for now, let's get back to the story.
During the imamate of Al-Kazim, there was increased persecution of Shia groups under the reign of the Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid. Al-Kazim would be in prison several times throughout his tenure, dying during his last imprisonment in 799. And like the other imams, most Shia believed that he was poisoned. Like his father, some believed that he would become the Mahdi, and was therefore taken into occultation rather than dying. These followers would become known as the Waqafiyya, and this happened despite the fact that he had already designated a successor, his son, Ali al-Rida. The 8th Imam would eventually win over the Waqafiyya, similar to how Al-Kazim eventually won over the Nawasiyya. He was asked by the new caliph, al-Mamun, who had just come to power in a civil war, to meet with him in Khorasan. There, he named Ali al-Rida as his successor. The reasons for this are uncertain. Some believe that al-Mamun may have secretly been a Shia, others believe that it may be because of his Grand Vizier, who had Shia sympathies. It's also possible that he wanted to weaken numerous Shia revolts that had broken out in Iraq during the Civil War. Regardless of the reasons, he sent al-Rida home with the good news. But on the way back to Medina, he died. Many believe that he was assassinated by other Abbasid claimants to the throne. Al-Rida was succeeded by his son, al-Jawad, who was only 8 years old at the time. In order to justify such a young person becoming imam, Shia elders came up with the doctrine of ilm, which is a belief that the imam supernaturally inherit their predecessors' knowledge. Al-Mamun must have wanted to retain good relations with the Shia, because he offered al-Jawad his daughter in marriage. Unfortunately, this spills into conspiracies around his death, because in 835 it is believed by many Shia that he was poisoned by al-Mamun's daughter on the order of her uncle, al-Mutasim, who had succeeded al-Mamun as caliph. Al-Jawad would be succeeded by his son, al-Hadi, who was only 7 when he became the 10th Imam. Al-Hadi would have one of the longer imamates, but that's because at the age of 20 he was imprisoned by the caliphs reigning in Samarra, and while in captivity he died in 868, allegedly due to poisoning. Shortly before his imprisonment, al-Haki had a son, Hassan al-Askari, who at the age of 2 was taken with him into Samarra. After al-Hadi's death, there were Shia elders who didn't think Hassan was worthy of being the imam. He had received little to no formal education in the teachings of Shia, but he had a valuable supporter on the outside, Uthman al-Amri. In the decades since the death of Jafar al-Sadiq, this line of imams had built up a network of agents around the caliphate. Part of their job was to proselytize and convert people to Shia Islam. Their other job was to collect a special tax for the imam. This money would be used not only to subsidize the living situation of the imam, but also used to fund his agents. While al-Hadi was in prison, the head agent of the imam was Uthman al-Amri, who continued to give orders to the imam's agents as well as collecting taxes. With his support, the Shia elders recognized Hassan al-Askari as the legitimate 11th Imam. Al-Askari would have a short tenure as Imam, dying in 874 with no children. Uthman al-Amri had become the representative of both the 10th and 11th Imams during their captivities, and after the death of the 11th, he pounced upon a rumor that had begun to spread. Some believe that al-Askari had a child in secret with a slave girl, similar to the story of the 6th Imam's son, Abdullah al-Afta. This child was named Muhammad al-Mahdi. Al-Amri sent word to his agents and followers that this rumor was true, and that this child had been taken into occultation and would return as the Mahdi at the end of days. For the remainder of his life, he delivered messages to the Shia, which he claimed were from the 12th Imam. After his death, his own son, Muhammad ibn Uthman, continued this task, which was followed up by one of his companions, al-Nabakti. The final deputy of the Mahdi was Hassan al-Samari, who came from a prominent family of Shia agents, and had served both the 10th and 11th Imams. He served as deputy for only 3 years, delivering the 12th Imam's final message. In the name of Allah, the All-Merciful, the Especially Merciful. O Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samari, may Allah increase the reward of your brothers concerning you and your demise. Death will come to you within the next 6 days, so you complete your works and do not nominate any person after you. The sequence of special deputies will come to an end and the major occultation will commence with your demise. Now the reappearance will only occur with the permission of Allah, after a prolonged period and after the hearts of the people are hardened. And such a period will emerge on my Shias, when people will claim that they have met with me. Whoever makes such a claim before the advent of the Sufyani and the call from the sky is a liar, an impostor. And there is no strength nor power except from Allah, the High, the Great. And with that, we see the birth of the largest branch of Shia Islam. The line of the Imams that began with Ali and ended with Muhammad al-Mahdi are known as the 12 Imams, and the adherents to their teachings today are known as the Twelvers. The Twelvers were at one point the smallest Shia group around, because they refused to participate in the politics of the Umayyad or Abbasid caliphates. This left them weaker than their rivals in the beginning, but one of the benefits of keeping your head down is that it's less likely to get cut off. The other Shia factions rebelled their way into extinction, because when the Umayyads or Abbasids began targeting Shia for persecution, they went after the activist factions first. The only activist factions remaining today are the Zaidis and the Ismailis, and they were forced into geographical isolation, which protected them from extermination, but also prevented them from further expanding.
This is not the end of the story for Shia Muslims. This isn't even the full story of all their early years and schisms, but what I hope this video does serve is a useful starting point for you to dig deeper into the history yourselves. If you're interested in learning more, I have my sources listed down in the description below. Along with them, I have some Amazon affiliate links, where if you buy those books through those affiliate links, it helps financially support the channel. You could also support this channel by going to patreon.com/casualhistorian and becoming a monthly contributor. There you can get special perks like getting to see videos early, or getting other little things there. Those are subject to change. Also, if you're watching, I have a survey I would like the members of this audience to take when you have the time. Down in the description, you'll find the Casual Historian 2020 audience survey. I use this survey to gather data that the YouTube analytics just doesn't have. It allows me to better guide my future videos. So, when you're done watching this video, and also make sure to go watch Hikmah History's video, then make sure you take the time to fill out that survey. It helps the channel out a lot, lets me make videos that you guys want to see. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, then make sure you click the subscribe button and the bell icon to make sure you don't miss any future ones. Also, clicking that like button also really helps the channel and the algorithm. It helps put videos from my channel onto your home feed, and will also recommend other videos that are related to it. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to watch Hikmah History's video on the Fatimid Caliphate, and I will see you next time.